Oh, hi, Sam!
Well, here we are. After 4 entire years, after 3 entire delays, after many sneak peeks, snippets, and hype posts on Twitter and Discord specifically, the remaster to the final and best Sam Max game, Sam Max the Devil's Playhouse, is finally here. I'm not going to go in depth on what I both think of the original game and the remaster today, but I will say this. The remastered version of the Devil's Playhouse is not only the best out of the Skunkape Games remasters of the Sam Max Trilogy, but also the best way of the game entirely. That game which, in my opinion, is the greatest video game of all time. The Devil's Playhouse means so much to both me, many other people, Telltale as a company, Sam Max as a franchise, and point-and-click adventure games as a genre. It's combined literally every aspect of the characters we love from both the comics, cartoon, and Hit the Road, using them to create a story with never-before-seen styled scenarios, characters, stakes, moments, conflicts, and much more. It improved the gameplay by a whole light year with additions like the iconic Max mode, better designed hints, easier controls, less non-point-and-click minigames, way better designed puzzles, etc. It had the best atmosphere, the best music, the best presentation, the best details, and was just overall a timeless experience without a single flaw I could think of. But now, with this remaster, we have an even more better game with updated visuals, sounds, presentation and design, but also way more additions and changes we never knew we needed. It brought back unused voice lines, the ability to turn the film grain on and off, hand-draw graphics for Sam's interface, Maximus getting his long-lost concept art hat back, better animated cutscenes, more detailed character designs, story-related notes, and so much more. Combine that with the fact that the game is available on all platforms, only costs $20, has 15 hours of complete gameplay, features the original 2010 version of Steve for free, and is overall an unforgettably legendary experience, makes it the greatest video game ever made. So, Skunkape Games, the group of veteran Telltale Games developers who worked on all the games from their company's golden age, thank you for bringing these remasters into reality. Without them, I wouldn't think this series would be as popular as it is nowadays. These remasters were literally the things that brought Sam Max into popularity and into their current renaissance. I've literally got nothing to say. Thank you for bringing this masterpiece of a series to my generation, and I hope that all of the people who were able to make the remasters finally get to move on to their separate project after this entire 4-year journey. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. No, this isn't over yet. Even though I briefly explained why I love this remaster and gave a thank you to Skunkape Games, it feels like we're missing something here.
Only 32 easy payments of $79.99 and receive your own future vision. Includes free nutrition specs.
These are the Nutri-Specs, quite possibly the most infamous item in Sam Max the Devil's Playhouse. The Nutri-Specs serve as a hidden Easter egg and a secret toy of power that Max can use throughout Sam Max 301, the Penal Zone, whereas the other toys of power are used for solving puzzles, making puzzles easier with stuff like hints and fast traveling, providing funny moments for the player, and deepening the plot with its unique and creative designs that fit the universe. The Nutri-Specs only serve as a hidden bonus to provide funny moments to the player. For a really unique addition to the game like this, there's a story behind its grisly tableau. A story that you might not expect from such a small item like this. On December 8th, 2009, the domain sammax2010.com was revealed to the public as a post-credits scene of the Tales of Monkey Island's final chapter, Rise of the Pirate God. People were finally getting to see the glimpse of the next Sam Max season and were able to see many different pieces of art, indicating that this season is going to be much more different than the usual style the fans got used to with seasons 1 and 2. There were images of things such as the white-haired space gorilla, a Sam with a suit similar to the one from the TV series The Telltale Tale, a space bazooka that looks similar to Max, a grey and black suited man that resembles the narrator from the Twilight Zone, and most importantly, this. This is a menacing looking toy phone, named by the community as the Telephonter. It's the very first toy of power the community got to see. The toys of power at the time were heavily focused by the developers because of how new of a concept they were to the series. Telltale clearly knew that the hype behind the game and the concept of the Toys of Power was so huge, and so because of that, they came up with a big bright idea for the marketing of the game. On July 7th, 2009, Telltale released the first episode of their new point-and-click adventure series, Tales of Monkey Island, titled The Launch of the Screaming Narwhal. During the few months of the episode's release, Telltale hosted an online in-game treasure hunt, where players could play a special mode simply called Treasure Hunt, where players could direct Guybrush Threepwood, the game's protagonist, through a maze to collect treasures that held prizes and discounts to Telltale's website. This mode was able to be accessed through secret pages on multiple sites, including the official Telltale site and 3 separate Monkey Island fan sites. Telltale were really proud of the secret competition they made, and for what they learned from them making it, they decided that they wanted to do something a bit more different for Sam Max. Something a bit more easier, more focused on the comedic nature of the game, and something less competitive. A game where players would work together to find the secret prize. The solution? An ARG.
Thanks for calling the Toys of Power hotline. Fortunately, due to demand for our sweet psychic toys, everything is currently out of stock. Please visit us at 516vision.com. Your call is very important to us. Please leave a message after the tone.
Telltale Games' ARG plan was simple. Sam Max Adults Playhouse will have a fan-wide ARG hunt where players around the community would be searching for a secret phone number that would lead them to a website, which would then lead to a web game, which would reward the players who completed the web game with the Nutri-Specs, an exclusive toy of power that was able to be unlocked. Telltale had really high hopes when it came to making this ARG a reality. They wanted to make a fun community experience that would reward the players more comedic content that the Dolls Playhouse was straying away from thanks to its more unique and different narratives. This plan was going smoothly and well for Telltale at the time, and we're excited to make the ARG game into a reality for the fans to build up the hype for the game. But then, sadly, because of possible development issues the company had at the time with making a new engine for the Devil's Playhouse, along with the fact that Telltale was in the very early stages of development for the next game, Back to the Future the Game, the Nutri-Specs ARG was unexpectedly cancelled before it was even announced and developed. So because of that, Telltale couldn't feature the Nutri-Specs in the unique way they had intended. But not all was luckily lost. Telltale shortly after came up with a plan of how to feature the new content made for the Nutri-Specs. Since they made a bunch of new textures, graphics and voice lines for the Nutri-Specs, alongside the fact they had fully programmed them into the game, they felt like they didn't want to leave the new content behind as unused, and also felt like they wanted to make the item special like it was supposed to be before, but in a much cost-effective and easier way. The other solution? They made the Nutri-Specs as an exclusive item for the game's PlayStation 3 version. Now for some context, around 2010, Telltale finally took notice of the PS3 growing in popularity thanks to the PS3 Slim and the reduced price of $2.99, and shortly after made PS3 ports of some of their most recent games at the time, Beyond Time and Space, Tales of Monkey Island, SPCG4AP, and would soon after make a port of Back to the Future the Game. So, as a way to make their fans purchase a PS3 version that could be bought on PSN, Telltale included the Nutri-Specs for the very first time in episode 301, the Penal Zone. And to unlock it, all the players had to do was beat the episode once, replay it until Act 2, and go to the new location titled Mysterious Alleyway, where Sam Max can find it inside of a dumpster. And so, there they were. The Nutri-Specs got to actually appear in the game, although only as a console exclusive New Game Plus item used for 10 minutes of extra content, completely gone from the PC version. And it stayed like that for years and years. And that was the end of the Nutri-Specs story.
Sam and Max, freelance police.
Cue up the entrance music.
On June 27, 2024, Skunkape finally revealed a launch trailer for Sam Max Adults Playhouse Remastered, the final game of the Telltale Trilogy to get the remaster treatment. Originally planned to release in winter 2022, only to be delayed in winter 2023, only to be delayed again in spring 2024, only to be delayed once again to summer 2024, Skunkape were really happy to finally show off the biggest remaster they have made yet. We got to see more footage of the episodes we didn't get to see in the Remastered before, we got to see some extra scenes, confirmation of unused voice lines, and many other things that fans took notice of during the trailer. However, on the same day, Skunkape Games posted this. The elusive Nutri-Specs are hidden deep in the game on all platforms. It has finally been confirmed by Skunkape Games. The Nutri-Specs are finally going to appear in the PC version of Sam Max Adults Playhouse, after years of fans requesting the item to be added in the original PC version of 301, and even people requesting them to be brought back in the remaster. But there's also something else in the tweet that's interesting, that being the last sentence of the post saying, "Have fun finding them." Now, why would Skunkape Games tell the fans of the game to have fun finding them, when in the PS3 release, the game showed a message when the location of the Nutri-Specs were unlocked? It would have only seemed that the developers have somehow changed up the way the Nutri-Specs were achieved in the game. And so the remaster came out, and the Nutri-Specs were confirmed to be entirely hidden in the game, and got turned into a tiny Easter egg hunt as a makeshift ARG, slightly similar to the one that was intended to be made for the original release of the game in 2010. Thanks to the fans being able to work together to figure the puzzle, they quickly found out how to solve it and find the Nutri-Specs. In the ending of 305, Time Elevator has multiple cards with a few numbers and icons on them, which would seem to only look like some sort of code, starting from the top to bottom. In 301, players found a numpad next to the door of the location where you find Stinky Cell in Act 3. This numpad just so happened to have the same icons of the same numbers from the supposed code-looking time cards in the ending of 305. And once players found out that was the code for the numpad to enter and open, players have found this. These cracked you up, good luck. This note right here, alongside the two photos inside it, is the reason why I decided to make this video. What you're looking at isn't just a simple little non-canonical Easter egg of Sam wearing the Nutri-Specs. This is an entire new lore drop about an aspect of the Devil's Playhouse story we have never saw before. And today, I'm going to explain exactly what the entire Nutri-Specs Easter egg means, why it's such a cool thing added to the remaster, and exactly why it's probably the best Sam Max lore drop we got in years. So let's ask ourselves, what exactly is this photo supposed to show us in terms of the Sam Max lore? Well, it's clearly obvious. This photo of Sam Max with Sam wearing the Nutri-Specs is an image of past Max's timeline. Let me explain. The post-credit scene of the Devil's Playhouse is really beloved by the community, because of the sheer fact that despite the game making us think that Max was truly lost and never got to be seen again, his past self from 204 that we meet in Act 3 suddenly appears from the time-traveling elevator, because he says,
"We were on a case and you got turned into a giant monster with electromagnetic powers, so I kinda had to blow you up. It was horrible."
This was a pretty good story trait added to the game, to make it feel so that despite this being a different version of Max, they both experienced pretty much the same situation, tying up the possibly final and most important loose end with Sam's character, and the iconic message of letting go of the past being enhanced and made important to the story even more by Max immediately say,
"So, wanna stop some crimes?"
Let's!
Making this the completely perfect ending the game deserved, which was very nice. However, ever since the game's ending was first released, many people wanted to wonder, how exactly did past Max's timeline look like? Well, even though we haven't and may never get an entire answer like that, the best thing we could have ever get was this photo. There's a meaning to the "These cracked you up" message, because it's really simple. The Nutri-Specs were alternative timeline Sam's favorite toy, and was possibly one of the few toys they collected that were entirely different to the ones our Sam saw in the Devil's Playhouse. And the alternate timeline Sam loved them so much to the point where he would always feel cracked up whenever he used them on something. So it's pretty clear that past Max placed this image to show off our Sam, as a glimpse to what his timeline was like. The cherry on top being the other line of text under the photo, with past Max wishing Sam good luck throughout his journey. Now, we aren't completely done yet. There is still more inside this numpad locker. More specifically, this tiny other note of text. P.S. Here's this back, with a screwdriver on the right. For those who remember, in 204, Sam Max gave past Sam Max a screwdriver that they would be able to use when they get to the events of 204 in their timeline, in exchange for the recording contract they got from 102, which Sam Max needs for a puzzle. This means that past Sam and Max must have used their screwdriver when they went through the events of Beyond Time and Space, and somehow were able to keep it for so long, and as a possible gift of remembrance, past Max kept it in there to remind our Sam of the events of 204, the past duo, and the fine times he had with his Sam. However, the next thing visible in this numpad is probably the most important, interesting, and the one we can make the most theories of how these contacts in the numpad came to be. When picking up the screwdriver, behind it we can see another photo. This photo specifically. This is a photo of the alternate timeline 305, the city that dares not sleep, answering a question that the community has been asking for the most when it came to the alternate Devil's Playhouse timeline. How did 305 play out? Well, since we know that in 305, Superball, who was turned into president immediately after Max got turned into a monster, was the one who launched the final imperative to get out of Giant Max, despite the fact that Sam and the rescue team for Bosco Tech had a plan of their own. From what we can assume, Max, with him being president, also had no other choice but to destroy Sam. However, he could have then come up with a plan of saving him before attempting to blow him up. By the looks of the image, we can see that the plan that Sam had in 305, with turning the DeSoto into Max's favorite snack, just so happened to be the same plan Past Max had for Past Sam, with him turning the DeSoto into the iconic popsicle that Sam was seen multiple times eating. Most notably on the cover for Sam Max Hit the Road, the duo's most iconic adventure. One thing we can notice about the image is the fact that it's entirely snowing outside, and from the lighting, we can also assume that instead of nighttime in 305, it was daytime. Some fans in the community have suspected that the snow was caused by the monster version of Sam in Alt 305, which could have then be used by Past Max as an advantage, and possibly the concept of the idea Past Max came up with is to save his version of Sam. But what I like to think was, just like how the corn dog was able to be made thanks to the Max spores separatingly boiling the puddle, Past Max could have frozen the puddle separately from the recipe used for the popsicle. My theory? He used a slave from Ice Station Santa, which was brought to the future Sam Max to freeze over hell in 205, to freeze up the popsicle. To me, that theory feels more in line with the fact that Past Max had the 204 time machine at his disposal and could get anyone and anything to help him out with the situation. Speaking of the timeline, it's related to what's next to talk about in this image. The rescue team of Past Max's operation. Quite possibly the most interesting part of this whole image. Despite Sam being clearly a better negotiator than Max in terms of convincing other people for something, asking questions, answering questions, and overall skills of discussion, Past Max seems to have able to get even more people to save his version of Sam than in the original timeline 305. Specifically 3.5 times more amount of people than Sam has. The people of the image being Grandpa Stinky, the owner of Stinky's Diner, Flint Paper, their next door detective friend, director from episode 102 Situation Comedy and producer of the show Midtown Cowboys, Past Max and Future Max from 204 Chariots of the Dogs, Myra Stump, also from 102 and the host of her own talk show, and finally Samumak, the antagonist of 303 and former pharaoh and owner of the Devil's Toy Box. This is a pretty interesting selection of people that Max was able to bring for the rescue mission, with some of these characters not making much sense and why they tag along and help out Max. There is a theory in why some of these characters appear, but we will touch on that in a minute for now. For now, here are my assumptions on why exactly Past Max chose these characters to convince them to help Sam. First, Flint Paper is a question we can immediately answer. Max respects and really likes Flint as a colleague and friend, especially because of his fighting style and the bond he has with both him and Sam, so it's no wonder why he'd gladly help out Max in an attempt to save Sam. Next up is Grandpa Stinky, a bit less obvious than Flint Paper, but makes sense when thinking about it. Max is a frequent customer of Stinky's, even though Stinky is constantly annoyed by him and Sam, and blames him for stealing the patent to his gooey molasses tar cake, as well as him being quick to make fun of Max's height, which Max doesn't appreciate in the slightest. They're still very familiar to each other, with Sam Max still appreciating and liking Grandpa Stinky for what he's done to help them in episode 304.
I miss Grandpa Stinky and his blasphemous recipes.
Thanks to the strength he portrayed in Act 1 of Beyond the Alley of the Dolls, Past Max was probably able to bring him in to join him thanks to the power he wields that he could have used to fight off potential threats, or possibly the Sam spores that would have come out of the Elder God version of Past Sam. Now here's a more interesting one. In the image, right in front of Max, we can see Baby Max and Future Max, which appear both in Act 3 of 204, Chariots of the Dogs. Now, Past Max choosing the very versions of him to help him save Sam can be problematic in two ways. 1. With there being 3 people with identical body structure, those people of which coincidentally being the same person, there is less variety in the type of people working on the mission and therefore less possibilities for potential unexpected consequences of the mission, such as how many unexpected moments happened in the original 305. And 2.
Temporal anomaly detected.
But, when thinking it through, it would make sense as to why Past Max chose the versions of him to help him out. In 204, we can quickly take a glimpse of Past Sam and Max walking into the elevator and possibly exploring the times through the time cards Prime Sam and Max collected throughout the episode, meaning that even before they got to experience 204 in their time, they got to look around in the timelines we saw in our 204, one of them possibly being the past and the future, where we met the past and future version of the duo. Since Past Sam and Max from 102 are portrayed as less smart and less aware of their goals, they must have loved seeing a more differently written interaction than in the ones they got to be in the less pleasing episodes like 101 and 102. And since the time-traveling elevator came from 204, which was probably past Sam and Max's favorite case because of how they possibly love using the time-traveling elevator, it would only make sense he would bring two versions of himself from their possible favorite case. But it isn't all favoritism again for him to risk a temporal anomaly in the universe, since there could also be a good skill-related reason for bringing Future and Baby Max. Starting with Future Max. Since Future Max is obviously the past Max many years after the events of 305, he probably would know much more about the situation than past Max does, since he is literally a more wiser and smarter version of him, as portrayed in the scene where he first meets him in 204. As for Baby Max, one would not quite understand what kind of benefits past Max would get from him at the first glance, until you look at the picture again. As you can see, the most noticeable thing about Baby Max in the photo is the fact that he's holding a power core. When looking back at the scene where we meet Baby Sam Max in 204, we can remember that, at the time, they were real nerds when it came to programming and AI, specifically when working on the Bluster Blaster, with Baby Sam being the one working on the game and Baby Max testing it out. Just like any young friends would, we could suspect that Baby Sam may have shown some things related to how the game works, and also possibly related to how power cores could have possibly been used to make electronics right to Baby Max. Since we can also suspect that Baby Max was brung right when he was playing the game, we can conclude that he had some electronic experience when it comes to the materials past Max had that he could use for the mission. In short, Baby Max was brung in to help out for having experience with electronics, with the power core possibly being used to aid them in the quest, either from something minor, or possibly even removing the brain tumor that past Sam could have gotten when he turned himself into a monster. And now, we're on to the final three members of the rescue team we can talk about. There's not much we can theorize about here, so we will keep it short. Myra Stump and the director, who appear in Sam Max 102 Situation Comedy, also get to appear as a part of the rescue team. Since Myra and the director were one-off characters that only majorly appeared in one episode from Season 1, with Myra having another appearance in 105, albeit much more minor, with only having around 40 lines in just a single act, there isn't much we can suspect that Myra and the director could help out in this situation, since there's not much we know about them aside from the fact that Myra is a talk show host who likes good behavior, and the director is a slightly mad producer of Midtown Cowboys. What we can understand is the reason why they were chosen. Since 102 Situation Comedy is a major part of this image, and past Sam Max has characters who come right from the events of 102, we can once again suspect they were brought in because of the recurring fact that past Max loved 102's events, and the whole case in general. Not to mention, Max himself actually really likes watching Myra's talk show.
Well, well, Myra Stump holding her audience hostage. You watch that particular bit of daytime fluff occasionally, don't you, Max?
Whenever our TV's out of hock, for some reason I can't get enough of her sharp-toothed maternal ranting.
Even though Myra probably isn't important in this image, the last character we're talking about is, that being, the human form of the pharaoh Sam Max. Despite us only seeing his human form throughout the painting scene in Reel 2 of 302, the Tomb of Sam Max, Sam Max, surprisingly in his human form, gets to join past Max in his rescue mission for past Sam. Now, all of us pretty much know Sam Max and his relationship with both Sam Max and the story of the Devil's Playhouse. He gets resurrected into Max's body by Sam, he takes the toy box to control the universe, gets thwarted by Sam Max, gets his brain stolen by Skunkape as a replacement to the Gordon, possibly dies in an explosion at the end, and that's it. Now, there can possibly be a greater reason why Sam Max could easily help out with past Max in this situation. His psychic gift. Similar to how Paperweight and Norrington were in the rescue mission for having prior knowledge to the psychic gift, Sam Max, with his psychic gift being similar to the one Max had, which was also similar to the one past Sam could have, could be a good enough member in the team, as he himself also has some good knowledge on how the gift works, possibly even more than both Max and past Sam ever did. Although, since Sam Max in this timeline was also stolen by Skunkape as a power source at the end, with past Max and the rescue team not being aware of that, alongside the fact that Sam Max probably dreaded both past Sam Max and was rooting for past Max to fail in his mission, which is something his prime version did in 305, past Max couldn't possibly get Sam Max to join his mission so easily. So because of that, Max possibly went way back in time, when Sam Max just got access to the Devil's toy box, convinced to recruit him with a promise of a reward, and so brought him out of his time so he can help the rescue team with the mission. Sure, this decision by Max is probably another potentially dangerous temporal anomaly, considering that Sam Max plays a major role into the story of the Devil's toy box, the Mole Man, Yogg-Sothoth, and the rest of the game itself, but just like how he brought Future Max and Baby Max in his timeline to further guarantee a success, and just like how Sam in the original 305 once said,
"I'd destroy half of any city to save my best pal."
Max would do anything, stop at nothing and try everything to save his best, most loyal, close, lovable and supporting friend ever. And he did this for Sam, and Sam would have done the same for him. And there we have it. Those are all the members of past Max's rescue team to save Sam in the alternative timeline. In my opinion, I quite like the selection of the characters that Max chose to help him out. Some of them were his friends, one of them was a villain he got from the past before his death, and the last two of them were himself. It pretty much shows that Max as a character truly does want to help out someone like Sam. So much so that he also remembers to bring out a few other people which he can easily call his friends as well, even with people who tried opposing both him and Sam like Sam Max. Past Max was able to bring such an ignorant person to help him out and possibly able to save his best friend. It seems like with the possibly limited amount of people he could have taken on the mission, for example, not being able to cause too many temporal anomalies or possibly not being able to bring some other people he would have liked to invite into the mission, like the Rubber Pants Commandos or Jimmy Two-Teeth or Satan, he had to think really hard about who he wanted to recruit for this really important job that he only had one chance in. This is something that ties really well with the original Trio 5, showing us that Max, as a character, is truly more than his own silly, funny, feisty, immature, reckless, impatient, annoying, destructive and violent self. Something that his superego taught about him as his motivation of acts in Trio 5.
Self-sacrifice. I've made a terrible mistake. Max is worth saving after all.
Told you so.
It's in my opinion the best way Trio 5 could play out in the alternative timeline where Sam wields a psychic gift. It echoes back to the original timeline while being unique on its own terms of ideas and fitting well with Max's character. But alas, just like Prime Sam, past Max sadly failed in his mission, and couldn't find any other way to save his Sam, and pretty much had no other choice but to blow him up. And so, that's it. Those were the contents that past Max kept in that very keypad locker as a memento, good luck message, and a glimpse into what past Sam was like, what past Max did try to save him, and what past Max wishes to our version of Sam after what he got to experience in his timeline. And so, after picking up the screwdriver off the keypad and using it in the straight and narrow in a tunnel, Sam is able to pick up an apple which he can use alongside the screwdriver on the Crimetron to find the elusive mysterious hallway location, where he can now unlock the Nutri-Specs in the way it was meant to originally be, finally after 14 entire years. It's available to everyone on every console version of the game. There you have it, ladies and gents. That is the story behind the elusive keypad and the Nutri-Specs Easter egg. Fun fact. In the original PS3 version of the game, inspecting the pudding Lincoln with the Nutri-Specs and afterwards interacting with it makes Max collect a piece of cardboard inside him and get the achievement Part of a Nutritious Breakfast. In the remaster, when inspecting his head after using the Nutri-Specs, Max pulls out a moving photo of Sam Max dancing up and down, which was drawn by Steve Purcell himself as a congratulations to the Skunkape team and as a thanks for the legacy that the Telltale Trilogy have left on the community and franchise. Really interesting. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, I want to talk about another aspect about this Easter egg that is worth mentioning. The community's theories. Just like I said earlier in the video, fans of the Dolls Playhouse made many different theories as to how the story went like in the alternative timeline in specific episodes with how they could have played out differently, and this was a part of a community that lasted for quite some time now, with there being theories related to not only Season 3, but also Pokénight 2 and this time it's virtual, and also a bunch of different fanfics and arts on how the alternative timeline went. However, with Skunkape Games revealing this huge lore drop onto us, even more theories started pouring around the community, with the fandom suspecting how other things in that timeline would go, like with the new lore info we got from the consoles of the keypad in 301. And so as a sizable bonus, I'd like to look at a few of these theories for this video and then conclude my thoughts and explain in a short way as to what the community came up with when it comes to this new Easter egg. First one of which I want to mention is the elusive Eternal Snow in the alternate timeline 305. Earlier in the video, I quickly touched on the topic of how I thought this happened, with Max using the slave from Ice Station Santa to turn the soda into a popsicle for Monster Sam. Now, this is a theory I came up with myself, but in terms of the fandom, their suspicions about the snowy environment are much more different than mine, so here's how it goes. In the alternative timeline, Monster Sam emitted a cold, snowy environment using an unknown psychic power, covering New York City entirely in a cold, dark night to freeze over people as a part of his monster's behavior. This is pretty much the most common theory about why the environment in this photo was different than the original 305, with piles of snow and many snowflakes in the sky, and it makes a lot of sense when thinking about it. We don't really know what Monster Sam looks like in this version of 305. We didn't know what other toys past Sam used in this timeline aside from the Nutri-Specs, and we don't even know if his monster form even had the ability to spawn his own spores. So the replacement to that could be a change in weather, temperature, and environment. It's definitely something we, as players and people of the community, least expect. But the reality is, it's a different universe. Just like pop culture taught us, every tiny thing in a different universe can be changed drastically whether noticeable or not. It would also make a lot of sense in the terms of the fact that it's also caused by temporal anomalies with time, so it's understandable why some things would be drastically different. The same thing can be applied with the fact that Max mentioned that his version of Sam's powers were more electromagnetic rather than psychic. And before you ask, no, the Kaiju Sam picture by Steve Purcell has nothing to do with this theory, and is possibly not connected at all, because A, the environment is more hellish, B, the Mecha Max doesn't have a single canon implication in the Telltale games, and C, Sam isn't the robot right there. Anyways, now that we mentioned what the theory is about and how it works, there are some other implications the fandom made about it. For example, known Sam Max community figure, Fanner, tweeted, "Would you call me crazy if I said their respective apocalypses are representative of how they are without each other? Sam in 303 was cold and standoffish without Max, and based on what we've seen in the cartoon, this time it's virtual Max is hot-headed and hysterical without Sam." This would make a bunch of sense. From what I saw in the original 305, Monster Max still had some Max-related tropes in him in terms of his actions, picking up stuff thinking they're corn dogs, trying to eat them, and just throwing them away. But there's also stuff like doing silly references and smiling when remembering the locations he's been in. So it could be pretty clear that something like that was applied to Monster Sam, but instead of physical actions, it would have probably been a cause of his Elder God-related powers that he could have unlocked in the battle with Charlie Hotep in 304. Without Max's warmth, Sam is cold and aggressive. Without Sam to cool him down, Max is hot-headed and self-destructive. This is a really interesting way to look into how Monster Sam's powers played out. Instead of Max's monster form being a simple elder god of destruction that feeds off nightmares of human souls, creepy I know, with the intent of destruction of reality itself, Monster Sam feels like he has no control over his form, and out of rage wants his own life, job, body and friend back, which is actually really sad yet really sweet at the same time. Sure, I may not entirely agree with the fact that that's how it played out, possibly because of a few reasons of mine being that Monster Sam, who once had electromagnetic powers, suddenly have ice powers being kinda inconsistent. The puddle of water at the beginning of 305 which Sam puts his solo in would have been frozen way before past Max could have had the chance to turn it into a popsicle, and just the overall fact that the idea of using the sleigh in 201 fits in more well with the idea that past Max can let go of the past and relies on objects and people from different times instead of moving forward with his life. Just like Sam in our time. But still, it's a pretty interesting topic to have different thoughts about. The next theory I want to talk about is right into the time-traveling machine. It's a theory that Max kept retrying his mission over and over again, with each attempt being a constant failure. This story concept has pretty much no implications anywhere, and is possibly the theory with least evidence. But let me tell you, whoever came up with it must feel like a genius. When thinking about it, past Sam Max appearing in 204 was a very major temporal anomaly. Since not only did the versions of Sam Max originally came from 102 take a time-traveling machine in their possessions, but earlier in the episode, Sam Max themselves were going through different time periods and pointing around them to continue on their journey, even to the point where they went to the beginning of time and messed with it with Mr. Featherly. Why is that so? Well, if a few of you remember, the post-credit scene of 204 shows us that the uncontrollable sombrero ship in which our Sam and Max have stirred out of control has just so happened to slam into the beginning of time and creates a brand new universe. This universe? It's the one past Sam and Max returned to after going back in the time travel elevator with the scene of them leaving for the last time, since they will go on and affect their time and events of Sam and Max Save the World and Beyond Time and Space. And with how we know that time travel accidents cause temporal anomalies that change the past, present and future, that opens up as different timelines, aka brand new universes. So yeah, the universe we see from the end of 204 is the one we can suspect to be the one where the alternative timeline with these versions of past Sam and Max take place, and therefore the one where past Sam gets psychic powers and turns into a monster. So, why exactly would past Max keep retrying his mission if all he could possibly change in his second chance would be to complete the process faster? Well, we'll have to look back at the photo of the alternative timeline 305 and see exactly what kind of temporal anomalies we can detect and theorize about how it could affect past Max's timeline. First off, we should talk about the two different versions of Max that were brought into the mission, starting off with Baby Max. This version of Baby Max is the one we can suspect to be the same one from the scene in 204 when our Sam Max meet them. So here are consequences and changes of time that could occur when past Max took him from his time. 1. With Baby Max not being there to playtest Baby Sam's Bluster Blaster, the cops, which we meet in 105, would probably not have formed as a group yet, and therefore the events of 105 might have been changed drastically. 2. With this being a quite scary mission for someone as small as Baby Max, in case he would ever get injured during the process by something unexpected, that injury would pass on to the alternative versions of Max and then afterwards future Max, because it would probably be a permanent mark at a young age. 3. Baby Max probably wouldn't like the idea of having to witness his best friend being a scary monster. Also the fact that he is on a mission that is not guaranteed to be successful might screw up with his mind, which would go on to then screw up with the minds of other Max's mental healths. As for future Max, his reasons for temporal anomalies could be the fact of him being a version of Max way after the events of an unsuccessful mission. Future Max might probably not even be on board with the idea of saving Sam, possibly by the fact he himself would have been trying again and again thanks to the time-traveling elevator, and even though he does join him, could probably still occasionally try convincing past Max to probably quit the mission because of his bias of being able to witness a terrible memory. As for Sam Max, there is a whole bunch of temporal anomalies that could have been caused by just bringing him before his first death. Examples of which preventing the events of Trio 2, Charlie Hotard never coming out, the moles never keeping in a tomb, Girl Stinky being able to kill Grandpa Stinky, Skunkape's arrival, the events of the game itself, and so much more. So what this theory is basically telling us is that this image could probably be either one of the attempts or the first attempt, with it not being successful because either past Max was late, or the fact he brought time-related versions of himself and Sam Max in a single fixed time period. So because of this, past Max could have kept trying over and over again, choosing different people to invite on the mission, whether they be from a different time or from the very same timeline. However, with each attempt, something must have been causing past Max to keep failing, all the while having to overcome any new obstacles that might occur during the process. Now, let's see what some community figures think about the theory and how they can interpret it in the story. User of Denson Wife made a whole 4-page list of how this theory could be interpreted into the events of the alternative timeline. Max's first loop gets him nowhere. He never enters Sam and never had a chance of saving him. He doesn't use the elevator until like a week later because he's still reeling from the pain. Max doesn't trust anyone to save Sam. The first attempts he brings some people besides himself, but after maybe the 10th loop of nothing new happening, he finds his other timeline selves. They even came up with theories of why his different versions got recruited. Future Max is recruited because Max believes since he's, well, from the future, he'd be a little bit smarter to help them save Sam. And while he thinks I think after a certain point Future Max would think the endeavor is hopeless because the Max leading them isn't concerned with what Sam needs. Baby Max is recruited mainly because there's a part in the body that needs a small body to crawl through. Baby Max holds the power core needed to possibly blow Sam up, and the other Maxes don't tell him what it's used for. Baby Max doesn't understand what's happening, but he thinks he's going to be Sam's hero. The other two Maxes usually make him turn away when Sam explodes. It isn't until the final loop where Baby Max sees what's happening he starts crying and asking Max if Sam is going to be okay. The next theory is a really mind-boggling one, and it's related to the idea of how past Max exactly left the note for our Sam in the penal zone. Since we know that past Max appeared right after the ending of Trio 5, albeit coincidentally, it's pretty hard to pinpoint down how exactly past Max left the message there, and if he even knew if Sam would find the code to open the keypad and take the screwdriver for the Nutri-Specs. However, I did come across a good idea by Fanner once again on Twitter. The implication that Alternative Max left his note for Sam before the events of our Trio 5. Alternative Trio 5 took place before ours, about a week in advance, so he genuinely waited a while before giving in and travelling back. He was writing to our Sam because he was so lonely and misses Sam so much. Despite his timeline being technically a different universe, the universe did in fact originate from a time-traveling paradox, and therefore a person from said universe could easily go into a different one by causing a temporal anomaly, with intent to make it more in line with the universe we would try to imagine going into. So, what he basically did was write a little note and take 2 photos of his timeline, possibly taken by going back to his events of the Doll's Playhouse and then afterwards placing them in the keypad, just before going back to his time, waiting for a bit, and then going to our Sam at the end of Trio 5. What this did was make a loophole so that the note could possibly appear in the other timeline, where our Sam Max would possibly be able to find the keypad, guess correctly, pick up the screwdriver to get the apple, and then afterwards the Nutri-Specs in the dumpster. How exactly did Sam get to find it? Well, it's been pretty clear throughout the games he does all the puzzles just by instinct.
What was that for, Sam?
That barrel was looking at me funny.
And as for if he even knew what the note and image was trying to say, probably not. Anyways, the concept of creating a temporal anomaly to transfer items and messages between timelines fits well with the series' quirky and unpredictable nature. The idea that past Max could have used a loophole to place the note and images in the other timeline, allowing Sam to find them, aligns with the game's playful approach to the time travel and paradoxes, and would just probably make more sense than going much more deeper with ideas that would probably stretch this video too far for its own good. Whew! Well, now that we have done a few fan theories that I really liked, I am now going to do a quick speed round through some of the ones I heard, which were a bit less related with the topics I wanted to tackle in this video, but still felt like I could talk about them and mention. Max was probably never present in this timeline, for some reason, and Superball was still insistent on blowing Sam up, either with the original way or similarly with the past Max was going to save him. They still control the legs and the arms. Future Max controls the arms, which is modeled after a shooting gallery, and Baby Max controls the legs in the gym, although this time it's a hamster wheel and not a treadmill. Instead of the superego, Sam has the id. In 304, I think there should be a past where Max is in danger and Sam has to rescue him with the abilities and accidentally fuses with a demon seed to become a monster. He's been coming back to this point in time to save Sam. The id knows it's hopeless and asks Max to let go of Sam and let him die. The id says Sam would want to be selfish and die if him and Max got alive. After dropping the other two off in their timelines, Max moves to Sam's timeline and puts that stuff in the keypad, including that screwdriver from Season 2. I think he did this way before any of the events of Season 3. I think Max followed our Sam Max on their adventure, or at the very least went to see Sam when his Max became a monster. He was keeping an eye out and didn't see if the events were still the same. That's probably why that good luck is there. He's hoping Sam does a better job than he ever could. Also, he wanted to remind himself of his adventures with Sam one last time before making his final decision to stay in the present timeline without Sam. The toys seen entering the toy box in 303 were possibly the ones past Sam was using in the alternative timeline. And that's it. That is the real end of the Nutri-Specs story and the new bunch of lore it dropped behind in the game's remaster. Well, this was quite a journey we had. Never in my 3 years of being a Sam Max fan would I expect to making a video as big as this, but I guess it was justified for how exactly important, cool and mind-blowing this whole Nutri-Specs are back in the remaster situation is in the Sam Max franchise. Just the thought of a nearly 2-decade-old special video game item that has been loved, praised and dreamed of coming to PC after a real controversial cancellation and sudden exclusivity change for PS3, coming back as a promise by the developers by not only just coming back on all systems but also giving us new lore after 14 entire years. It's just something you do not see every day in a remaster, especially when the lore drop is something fans have been theorizing on for years and years. It was tied to a really big question the community had after the release of the Diddle's Playhouse, a question of which could probably be asked right now. What's next for Sam Max? Are Skunkape Games ever going to make a Season 4? Will we ever get a remastered version of Hit the Road? Are there going to be any new media from Skunkape or perhaps other developers? Will the story of the Diddle's Playhouse ever be continued? Do we know what's next, when it's happening, or if it will ever happen? Well, in my eyes, only time will tell. But for now, I think we should really be glad over the fact that we, as a current community that interacts on a daily basis, wouldn't have been here talking without the veteran Telltale developers who went out of their way with a very small development team to remaster 3 of the greatest video games of all time. If you ask me, this extra Easter egg of the Nutri-Specs was just entirely heartwarming. It's the perfect thank you message to the community and for sticking by the developers, supporting their work on the Remastered Trilogy, with just overall reviving a franchise like Sam Max from obscurity. And we can't forget to mention the many implications this Easter egg brings to the table in terms of lore. From this entire journey we see that Max as a character truly does care for Sam, just as much as we saw Sam caring about Max in the original timeline. From all of these different things he tried, different methods, different rescue team members, different plans, timelines and theories, it really shows us no matter what we think about Sam Max's characters, there will forever be something about them that further proves us more that Sam Max, as characters in a duo, cannot be separated. There will forever be parts of them that show up their humanity, their morals and beliefs, and no matter what kind of adventures they go through, whether it's something both can't relate to or something that relates and resonates with both of them, they will forever be known as the non-separable, iconic duo that kicks the ass of crime. God bless the freelance police.